Larry Goldberg, did you know that Tesla finished in the green today?
Amazing. Good News Friday.
It's Good News Friday. Let's see. I think it was by 60 cents,
31 cents.
31 cents. There you go. So, I mean, end of show. It's really great. See you next time. Well, of course, the fact that Tesla ended up in the green today on a day when, the Magnificent Seven went like that, and the NASDAQ and the S&P, all the rest of them were like that. I think the S&P was at an all-time record for the S&P. I didn't have a chance to look. It might have
You know
gone.
what? I didn't either, but it's interesting.
Yes, I think it was all-time high today. And yeah, and bonds, the bond yields,
All-time high.
all-time high. Bond yields had gone up, but then came back down, which probably is why Tesla turned around and went back into the green territory. Anyway, it's been an interesting beginning of the year. I just found a fourth reason. I had three reasons yesterday, Larry, why Tesla has had such a rough start to the year. And a fourth one was added by an article. I'm forgetting which I might have been, I shouldn't say because I can't remember. Oh, Wall Street Journal. It's Wall Street Journal. And they said all of the EVs have been slammed. In fact, most of them have been slammed harder than Tesla. And this doesn't matter whether they're Chinese or American, they're all doing poorly. So that could be a fourth reason. What do you think is the biggest thing impacting Tesla share price?
Yeah, I do have to say that this has been the most intense season of FUD that I've experienced I would say, since 2017. 2017 was a 2018 was really a bad season. That production hell, the take private, all of that. By the time it went take private, the stock was up quite significantly. But the production hell and all the FUD around that. But somehow the FUD seemed to gather strength and broaden out into a whole lot of areas. Like the cold is supposed to be bad for driving Teslas. In the meantime, it's the best possible scenario. And just a whole lot of things coalescing together with a lot of negative stuff on X around Elon's posts. So that was the impression that's an impression that I got. But on the other hand, the continuing slide in the prices is really contributing to this notion that margins are going to be down again by a lot. We haven't seen the margins yet. Tesla hasn't given us any indication of what margins are like. But if we're to believe Wall Street, the margins have been cut very significantly. And generally, the Tesla community seems resigned to that. Well, that is really impacting their expectations for this year's earnings. And after all, analysts are only interested in this year's earnings. They seem not to really, look beyond that. So, the Cybertruck excitement is over. And, I said before the Cybertruck came out, it was going to impact the share price. Well, it didn't as much as I thought it would, but that after that, it would go down, and it has gone further than I thought it would. So, like you, I'm perplexed. I mean, why now? Why this much? So FUD, the view of the compacting margins, but all important. Now we look at, the longer term, catalysts such as Nevada starting, the battery supply improving, the Cybertruck, the feedback on the Cybertruck, all of that's very, very positive for our intermediate and longer term view. And I'm interested this quarter in what energy does. I think we're going to see, I've spoken to this before, I think we're going to see a lot of the revenue recognition for the last 14 months of deliveries, 14 to 18 months of deliveries, because revenue recognition takes a long time in that business. And I think we're going to start seeing it. I'm expecting a big leap in energy revenue recognition, energy revenue. I wish we had better sight of that energy revenue, and it would be one of the questions I would ask it, say, can they give us a better view of what to expect by way of energy revenues based upon contracts that they have now, because they must have clear sight of energy revenue through next year, given what's in the pipeline by way of revenue recognition and what's in the pipeline by way of contracts. And they must have now a fairly solid experience in revenue recognition and contract, cycles. So that's what's of great interest to me, because I think that could be an important catalyst in terms of offsetting the potential revenue margin reductions. Now, on margins, there is a lot of uncertainty about what degree of recognition there's been so far of reduction in cost, or what we perceive would be a reduction in cost from the supply chain.
Right.
How much of it we'll see this quarter, and how reticent Tesla will be to talk about it, I don't know. Tradition in the past, they've not given us any real insight into that. They've talked in very, very broad terms. But we know battery costs have come down dramatically.
Right.
I mean, dramatically.
Right.
And so the question is, how much is that feeding through in the financials now? So there, I've tried to encapsulate all that I see in the forthcoming earnings report. And again, the fact that Tesla is acting to these incredibly short cycles of FUD, incredibly short cycles of, price recognition and so on. Look, we should recognize that we are going to see continuous pressure on prices as Tesla tries to expand the TAM of its existing two models to a wider audience, to a wider market. It's just a given until we see the Model 2 emerge. And, the hope is, and the prediction, I'm making the prediction, that we're going to see an announcement next year, towards the end of the year. We're going to see the model itself.
This year?
Sorry, this year.
This year. Okay. I just want to make sure.
Still in 23, yeah.
Because some people think 2025. But
I think 2024. I think the end of 24, like we saw the Cybertruck, we're not going to see deliveries. We're not going to see deliveries, but we will see the model. We'll see the showroom version of it. I think there'll be a very big event. Better get your
reservation.
Yeah. I mean, look, the invites for that event are going to be really well sought after. So better start distributing your what's the name? Your Tesla. What do they call it? Referrals.
Yeah.
Now. So, the market is where it is. I don't know what to help. I don't know how to help people who are looking for price today.
Yeah.
I've had this problem before, that I'm really looking at. This is almost a last couple of quarters before we see, the Cybertruck deliveries widen out, the model, the next gen model being actually presented to us, and energy revenues getting to where they should be, and nothing will turn the margins significantly until we see that next gen car actually in the marketplace.
So Larry, I agreed with you on the things that were affecting the price, including the other one that I had mentioned was the guidance with regard to the number of units for next year. I know you're at 2.4, I'm at 2.35, but I'm still thinking through that number. I might go higher than you because I always like to be the most optimistic person on the planet. But I've got a hobby horse that I'm just going to continue to ride. And while a lot of this audience, was there yesterday when I did my huge rant, I am still going to at least talk to you about it to get your impressions. Tesla is known as a story stock, or people call it a narrative stock. All right. So there needs to be a narrative. There needs to be a story. There needs to be hope. There needs to be a future. There needs to be an understanding of where the company's going and why, the mission, et cetera. And Elon, there's nobody, I've talked about it in the book, my first book I wrote on the Elon Musk method. There's nobody better at delivering a great story, of delivering a future mission than Elon Musk. He's a genius at it. And yet he won't hire a PR department, which is the part of the company, not the advertising department. That's a completely different thing. The PR department, their job is to get the narrative, get the story into the headlines so that the press can't set the narrative. The company has created the narrative, and it doesn't even leave room for the FUD because you've already explained ahead. You've gotten ahead of the story. You're out before the story breaks.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And, the interesting thing is that we Tesla bulls really understand the narrative better than most.
Yeah.
And we can read Elon's given us the narrative.
Right.
We understand it and we try and promote it. I will tell you, a lot of people give the retail investors a lot of credit for the stock price and for spreading the story. But the reality is we're small beer. We are really small beer. We don't have the kind of, heavy guns that on the stock price side, the institutional investors have. And we saw that when S&P bought what happened to the stock.
Right.
And on the other hand, we definitely don't have the megaphone. Yes, it's true. There are a few of us with a couple of 100,000 followers that can, get some story out. But really, I think that it's a very limited, megaphone. I don't think it's a megaphone. I think it's just simply, a couple of hands clasped to the mouth. You're right. You're absolutely 100% right. And it's your channel, so I can't tell you you're wrong. But
You have done, Larry. Come on now.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. And I would tell you if I thought that. But no, I think you're absolutely on target. I've called for it. Gary Black has talked about advertising until he's talked himself, blue in the face. Guys, just $100 million. What's $100 million? It's nothing.
But I'm talking about PR, which is even less. It's just,
exactly. That's not even, that's $10 million.
At the most.
At the most. Yeah. A reasonable PR department must spend some money because not just the salaries. They must spend money. They have to. But, PR and advertising between them for this company does not have to be a lot because they are so visible. The brand is so well known. It is so visible that, it really should be used. And, I was on an investor call this morning and we were talking Tesla just on the side. It was a big investor call. There's some pretty heavy hitters on that call. Very heavy hitters, actually.
All right.
And on that call, there was a conversation about Tesla, and there was a guy there who, is older than me. And that's,
Larry, you're kidding.
No, I'm not.
He could hold the phone, or
It's kind of like that. And he lives in the UK.
Okay.
And, you know, he was on about the freezing temperatures. He was on about, you know, the cars exploding. He was on about no supercharging, no charging. You know, charging is a problem. And I explained to him about the charging networks. He said, yeah, but not in the UK. Well,
yeah, in the UK.
but in the UK, the Tesla network is really, really robust.
Yeah.
But you can't, you know, so the point is, this is your point. He shouldn't, a very prominent investor, a very knowledgeable person, he should not be blind to the reality. Because if he's blind to the reality, it's not his fault. It's Tesla's fault.
And I don't know if you know the stats, Larry, because it's not your specialization, but PR gets 10 times the amount of visibility and believability that advertising dollars get.
I have no doubt of it.
It's
I have
10
no
times.
doubt of it
That's the
at all.
stats forever. And I've been doing PR my entire career. And I can, you know, and my first wife was also in PR with Reynolds Metals, and she was doing PR, and that was the stats that they were going off of as well. That was her department. And it's just, I just don't understand. I understand that Elon has some kind of a emotional or, you know, he calls it propaganda as opposed to PR, but it's not propaganda. It is just merely setting your narrative by giving great stories. They don't have to be made up. They don't have to be propaganda.
But they're his stories. You know, he frames the story so perfectly. I mean, he's now moving Tesla into the realm of AI, robotics, and he's framed that.
Yes.
And he thinks because he says it on X, it now, you know, is being ingested by all that hear him. Well, I've got bad news for him. His story, even though it's on X with 100 million views, does not infuse itself into everybody's brains, number one. And number two, in a way, in some markets or some portions of the public, it's a negative that comes from him.
Right.
A good PR department can take his message and they can be a megaphone for his message. He doesn't have to worry about the message being distorted because he can see and hear exactly what they say. Now, I will say that something's changed at Tesla this year because we're seeing a lot of Tesla employees post on X.
Right.
And, you know, they're posting independently and individually, so that's something.
Yeah.
But that doesn't do it for me, and it certainly, I'm sure, doesn't do it for you.
No, it's so we've got an earnings call, I think, coming up next Wednesday.
Yes, we do.
So you are now a reporter for let's see, Barron's. They're probably my favorite right now. I think they're the most balanced. So you're a reporter for Barron's. What is the number one question or number 2 and 3 question that you want to ask next Wednesday?
Well, I do need to know about the 4680 ramp. In fact, I would ask the ramp question in this way. Can you give us insight into the ramps of the major product line that you have going now, and that is the Cybertruck, and in particular, the battery supply for the Cybertruck? You know, Brad Ferguson kind of framed it as, you know, is there a bottleneck on 4680s and what is it? But I'd like to ask, and that's a good question, but I'd like to ask the question and frame it as Cybertruck, and within that, how's the batteries doing in terms of getting that ramp going? The second question, I think the most important question in the company right now is, can he give us yet a timeline on next gen in terms of when he thinks it's going to launch? I think that is the it's not an existential question, because Tesla doesn't have an existential problem anymore. But I think it's an extraordinarily important question. And continuing the theme of, the Cybertruck launch, the next gen emergence, is the other incredibly important product that is in the pipeline, and that's Optimus. Can they give us a timeline on Optimus launch? So I would frame my question as a theme of product emergence and launch. Now, there are other products that are equally important. The product launch of Megapack in China, the launch of the Semi. These are important products. But if I were given 3 questions, I would focus on those 3. If I were given more, I would ask to the next issue of, China, the Shanghai factory and its expansion. Can they give us guidance on that? Can they give us guidance on the Megapack factory in Shanghai? And can they give us, guidance on the expansion of Nevada, in particular the Semi and the batteries? Those are the, if you want to package a set of questions that are thematic and that are critical to the survival, not the survival, because as I said before, survival is no longer the question, but to the growth and to the trajectory of Tesla, it's all about new product and product expansion and market expansion. And so those are the critical products that we're seeing today. So that would be my question.
So speaking of Giga Nevada and speaking of semis, Heinrichs Zane, at Heinrichs Zane on X, who is the drone operator over at Giga Nevada, he says that the groundbreaking for the Semi took place on Wednesday, 2 days ago, to no fanfare. He says he doesn't even think the governor was invited to be part of it. Only the employees were there. And so that was his speculation a few days ago and other people's speculation. So now we have an actual groundbreaking. Assuming a 9 or 10 months window for building that kind of a building, we could be looking at semi-production starting the 1st of next year. Does that make sense? And what do you think?
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. It's kind of tied to battery supply.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk today, and I was trying to hunt it down, but I've been hunting down. I've got to stop my research because I've got like five research threads going. I'm about to advertise for some intern. I've got to work out an intern. No, seriously, I'm about to work out an intern. I promised myself to work on an intern program. Yeah, and I'm particularly anxious to have it in place before I go away, before I go to Europe, because I really need the work to continue on I've got like 3 or 4 major projects, and I've got 4 or 5 things that I try and keep up with. Yeah. I'm used to having a staff, and I swore to myself, I'm going to do all of this myself. And I realize now how much work my staff did. It's not like I had a big staff. I just borrowed time from, people. Oh, yeah. And had them do extra work for extra credit, I guess. I don't know how they did it. I just don't know how they did it. Well, anyway, I'm gonna get an intern.
So Tony Seba was also on X today. Every once in a while, Tony Seba is popping up with a note, and he says, in my 2014 book, Clean Disruption, I predicted that the lithium-ion batteries would reach $50 a kilowatt hour by 2027. He says, at the time, that sounded insane. Nobody thought that was going to happen to the linear mainstream. But it looks like China may reach that number sooner. So if battery prices are possibly getting close to these levels, then Tesla should be feeling some of that benefit. You mentioned that above as something that we don't know and would like to know, maybe at the call. So maybe we'll have a beat on margins in this quarter because of batteries alone, because it's a big piece of the pie.
You know, we can hope, we can wish. You know, a lot of questions are going to come around margins, because we will hear the margins before the call. And so I've specifically avoided that discussion, because I regard it as superfluous to the mission. You know, as far as margins are concerned, I consider this a lost year. And I give them a pass on it because of the pandemic. I give them a pass on it, but I reserve that pass to a degree, because I've said all along, you know, that the rate at which they bring out new product is not where it needs to be. And it all turns on, you know, Tesla. I understand the pandemic had something to do with it, and I give them a little bit of a pass because that, but, and I've said it several times now, but really speaking, Tesla has to put on the big boy pants in terms of getting this material out, getting these new products out. And it's not that they don't do it quickly. They do. They just start later, because they have, you know, they've limited their numbers of teams because of one thing and one thing only, and that is Elon's reluctance to grow his R&D faster than his cash flow.
Yeah.
And, you know, they've built up a big stock of cash. Well, people think it's a big stock of cash. My thesis is it's just enough to get us through what's coming.
Yeah.
But I think that we have to go faster. I think we have to go faster. And if it means raising money, let's raise the money. Right. But we have to go faster.
So I did a couple of videos this afternoon on, I'm not going to be able to say his last, well, maybe I could. Let's see, I could try to say his last name. Matthew Vacha. Yeah, I can't do it. Anyway, you probably saw this video. It was a great interview, where he basically confirmed what
Sandy
Monroe has been saying for 2 years. He has apparently a massive staff of engineers that have been taking apart Teslas, every single Tesla he can get his hands on. And he said, look, Tesla is so far ahead of the rest of the crowd. If Tesla does what you and I think agree they will do in late 2024, early 2025, which is basically introduce the Gen 3 vehicle, not in one factory in Austin, but in at least 3 factories, more satisfactory. Oh, you're not sure of that?
No, that it is not feasible for them to introduce that in more than one factory in the first, because, you know, if you listen carefully to that presentation, which was fantastic, by the way, and we should post a link to it because everybody needs to listen to it.
Or they can listen to my version of it.
Yeah, but post a link in your version of it. It's important because, you know, this is a large engineering firm. They do teardowns. They have over 2,000 engineers. They did a teardown.
2,000, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they did a teardown. And more importantly than the teardown, they took the unboxed process and they did a very deep engineering study of the unboxed process, or what they thought was possible in the unboxed process. And that what they determined from that analysis, not the teardown, but the analysis, is that the unboxed process will reduce the cost of the car by 30%, 30%. Now, I'll tell you a little secret.
And that's compared to the Y. That's not compared to ICE cars.
That's right.
That's not compared to other makers. That's compared to the best maker in the world.
Yes, yes. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Somebody reminded me this morning, actually. It wasn't my thought, but I was reminded of it, and I knew I had been told this before. I don't know this from firsthand experience, but they told me, listen, teardowns are not the whole story. It's always better than the teardown.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is that the unboxed process is going to be a very significant reduction, but it is a massive change. And I don't believe they can do that in more than one factory at a time. I really don't. I think once they've got it and they're running on it, then they can replicate it. But, you know, you must remember that Berlin, Austin, and Shanghai all make a different Y. And we, you know, they don't have the same structure. They don't have the same structure. Only in Austin, I think, do we have a front and back casting.
Yeah.
And in Fremont, it's only a rear casting, I think. One of the two, front casting. So the point is that it's extremely difficult to roll out this thing, and it's even more difficult to do it in an old factory. So Berlin, they're building a brand new factory.
Right.
I think they'll put it in that factory. In Shanghai, I think they will add a new factory and put it into that factory. So, but what's interesting is that this firm that did the teardown, and we really should paste it, is actually consulting to 3 Chinese companies who are exploring a project to test the unbox process.
Right. Yeah. And one of them is this close to signing a contract. So my theory, Larry, was that let's assume that one of those Chinese companies says yes, and they're going to do a pilot line. Well, the pilot line is going to take them 9 months to a year at the very minimum. Then somewhere along the line in that pilot development, they'll make a decision whether they're going to go forward. Now they got to build a building unless they've got a building in mind. Then they've got to do their, they got to take it from a pilot line to a real line. I mean, they're probably—
You're talking about China. Those 3 things could happen almost in parallel.
Okay. So you're thinking how long? You're thinking that it'll take Tesla from this point, from today, you're thinking it's going to take almost a year before the first ones roll out. So if I'm a Chinese company and I start today and I give the contract to Matthew today, how long before they would roll out their first product?
You know, it may be a little bit behind Tesla, but what does it matter? They're miles away. I mean, Tesla will start in this market, in the US market, with that car. They'll, if you look at Shanghai, they can be within 6 months, they can have that car running in Shanghai from a greenfield. I mean, I think that Shanghai will be able to meet the challenge of the competition. I wouldn't. Tesla has got such a halo around its name in China, frankly, that, I think the biggest problem in China, we learned actually in this video, is that the Chinese like to have a different shape, of car, so that people can see they've bought the latest car.
Right.
And Tesla have been incredibly successful in maintaining the shape of the model while changing everything inside. So they do need to have some sort of form factor, not form factor, design improvement year by year, even if it's very cosmetic, in order for people to say, see, I've got a new car now.
So I'm going to go the other way this time, Larry. I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm just going to say I'm going to give a second alternative way that this will take place. That Shanghai, the engineering team over there, the design team over there, the manufacturing setup team, the construction team, everybody that's over there in Shanghai has a reputation for being the top. Tom Zhu is the guy who put all those people in there. He has a great history of working with those people. So I think at minimum that Shanghai will be at least close to, maybe a month or two behind Austin rather, that it's going to be important for them to show that they can independently, if you will, even though there's plenty of conversation back and forth, but independently that they will get up and running very, very rapidly.
From your lips.
Okay, so let's switch to the general economy. Reuters says the University of Michigan's preliminary reading on the overall index of consumer sentiment came in at 78.8 this month, the highest reading since July of 2021. This is compared to 69.7 last month, and that's quite a jump from 69.7 to 78.8. Economists polled by Reuters had only expected it to go up a couple of, barely go up at all.
I can't remember a jump of this
No.
magnitude in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I just cannot remember a jump like this. I remember there was a jump when Reagan was elected, and then it kind of tailed off, but there was a jump. I don't think it was anything like this.
And then this is the second straight monthly increase, and occurred against a backdrop of the stock market rally and a fairly heated labor market and gasoline prices that had held, actually, they'd gone down,
Yeah.
actually to kind of really low levels. And it says that the index has now rebounded nearly 60% after plumbing record lows in June of 2022. It is now just 7% shy of the historical average, so it's still below the average. And then this was really important. The survey's reading of 1 year inflation expectations dropped to 2.9 this month from the 3.1 it was last month. And that puts it right in the range of what the Fed wants it to be. We have to keep in mind that the Fed is looking for a 2% inflation rate, but that this consumer report from the Michigan University, this is needs to be between 2 and 3% in order, the Fed thinks, in order for us to actually get to 2%. So this is a pretty significant reading.
Well, the Fed always tries to adjust before we get to the 2% because there's always that build. So everybody's trying to prove me wrong. Everybody's conspiring to prove me wrong. And, this is I mean, the market's was at an all-time record, is at an all-time record. That's got to say something. So, could be Janet Yellen's right for the first time in her life, but maybe, maybe she's right. I'm wrong. I'll fess up if I am.
Well, I'm not sure that any of this yet tells us that we're not going to have recession later this year. I'm still at 50-50 on that one, because there's a lot of other readings that are not this strong. But the consumer sentiment that's a pretty good number, but we do have to remember that's consumer sentiment about how they're feeling now and how they think the future is going to be. But I'm not sure that it's predictive, unlike some of these other things that we're looking at that are more predictive.
You don't think the market is predictive?
The market's predictive, and the market being up would be something that I would definitely look at. I think 6 to 9 months it predicts out. And so this would right now be saying, contrary to my thinking and your thinking, that the third quarter might be okay. We'll see what the market says next week and the next week, because the first week of January was lousy. They have this rule, right? If the first week is lousy and the whole month is lousy, it's going to be a bad year.
I don't know. I'm really, I ponder all of this, and then, I realize that it's really a very tiny sample, a couple of weeks of that all of this can disappear in a flash if the Fed, talks it down. We'll see.
And the opposite is true. If the PCE comes out next week and shows this will be 8 months in a row of being in that 2%, 1% range where it's been for a very long time, then I would see that the bond market would just go crazy if the PCE comes in with a good print. That's not investment advice, but that would be the only thing I think that's been holding things back, is that lousy CPI report last week.
It's amazing how sentiment changes on a decimal point.
Isn't that right?
In an index that is so poor poorly structured and has such little, such little reality, to it. We have to instrument our economy in a better way.
Yeah.
We have to. I mean, the instrumentation in how we measure this stuff is so, it is so last century. It's incredible.
Yeah, you've got that right. Well, okay, I just took a quick look, Larry, and the Tesla story continues to be good news. So we'll start on good news. We'll end on good news. Tesla is up 28 cents in the after hours. So,
Well, it's Friday, right? So they aren't really after hours. It's just the closing cross, right?
no, I think there is an actual after hours on Friday. It's no pre-market on Friday.
Oh, right.
So, but there's an after hours on the stock market. Yeah, so up 28 cents. So, it's just good news all around, Larry. We've got a total of almost 60 cents on the upside for Tesla today.
Big day, big day.
That's a big day. At least directionally, it has gone in a more positive direction. Any last thoughts before we adjourn for the weekend?
No, I'm pretty interested in what Elon tells us or what he doesn't tell us at the meeting next week. And I'm hoping that he's in a good mood.
Me too. That's the main thing. Just his good mood. That would be helpful. All right, Larry. As always, thank you for co-hosting Good News Friday. We will see you, if not before, we'll see you Good News Monday. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.